As you move on down here, Matt, there's something I wanted to ask you about. Corin came and he stood over the fire that's being made here. The flames, they rose, they're flickering, and so on. And he says, as shy as a maid on her wedding night, the big ranger said in a soft voice, and near as fair. Sometimes a man forgets how pretty a fire can be. And he starts to think, was Corin a man who would speak of maids and wedding nights? He had spent his whole life. He had spent his whole life in the watch. Most men don't, Matt. Most men don't spend their whole life in the watch. It's like they come halfway through. So I think there's something fishy with that, the whole idea. Like he would be one of few who was like, born there, raised there, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, how does that work? Anyway, did he ever love a maid or have a wedding? Why ask that question, right? Did he ever love a maid or have a wedding? So there's like backstory here to Corin, and it just leads us all to kind of believe that he's an interesting fella who lost half of his right hand in some combat. We like to speculate it's Howland Reed saving Eddard Stark, and that this would be Sir Arthur Dayne. We do know that Stone Snake is still out there and could tell us more later. We'll get to all that here in a bit. But I mean, that's like when you look at this, why spend your whole life at the watch? Was he born into it, or is that a misconception that John has, or is that?
Well, you know who else? You know who else is theoretically born into the watch is Mance Rayder.
Right. All these guys, it's interesting. While I'm thinking about these connections here, real quick, let me just go rapid fire on you folks for this, because at one point in this chapter, Matt, let's just go over the Targaryen connections, okay? Because this is insane. Like, there are so many. Squire Dalbridge, right? He is a squire to a former Targaryen, right? He's very close, takes commands from Corin Halfhand here. Corin has this silver gray hair, right? He's just old, right? but he comes with Dawn.
As tall as a spear.
As tall as a spear. God, the idea that he's been here at the watch the whole time to cover up some possible backstory. There was, when Squire Dalbridge his head is held up. He's as bald. He's as bald as he's an old bald man, and they hold up his head and it says it looks like an egg. Looks like an egg. It reminds me of just connections to. You think in George's mind, like if you're trying to make these little connections to Targaryens. Okay, well he's the squire for one. His head looks like an egg. When Corin is slashed in the throat by Jon's sharp sword, which could be Blackfire, right? All the theories there. He had a pearl of rubies, a glamour. A pearl of red blossoming, like little rubies around his neck, as if he was bleeding out. Why describe him that way? Just interesting. So there's more. There's more.
Right.
But I mean,
well, it just remember, because I always like to point this out. Remember that the first Dunk and Egg story, right, is released the same year as the Clash of Kings. Remember that. Just remember that, right?
Remember that. It's in his mind, right? He's thinking, He's setting up this backstory. So, gosh, man, I still can't get over just the orders that are given to Eben, Stone Snake, and these guys, and the way they obey Corin is so interesting. Telling Mormont what they saw. The old powers are waking. The faces, the giants, the wargs, and worse, the trees have eyes again. These guys are believers in old powers, and there's someone named Bloodraven who went to the watch, has disappeared, and is ordaining things from his cave.
Pour one out for Squire Dalbridge, by the way.
He's a boss. He's a boss, right? And he's blowing that horn like it. For a moment, they thought perhaps, First John had nursed the hope that Squire Dalbridge would keep the wildlings bottled up in the past. It was the last John chapter, I think, where it was Squire Dalbridge who basically, I can't remember if it was Corin or Squire Dalbridge who said it, but that one man could hold so many wildlings in this one spot. And Squire Dalbridge is just like, without question, gotcha. I got it. Without question, I will die here. I will lay down my life. They say later on that I forget who it is that we're going to send someone on horseback to ride on ahead. And John wants to know why that's not him. He's one of the fastest riders. Why not him? He could get back to the Fist of the First Man quickly. No, you have another part to play. Your story goes, I think it even says his story like goes in a different direction. So it's just like, and that's Corin telling him that no, we have plans for you. Now, is that just to get him close to Mance? Is that because he thought the best chance here was for him to go in and be a spy, or did he really not think he could get back to the Fist of the First Man in time? So he's saving his life in that regard. A lot to think about there with Corin's decision and not sending John back.
Yeah, it's interesting with Squire Dalbridge, right? I mean, let me just go over this guy, right? Dalbridge, called Squire Dalbridge, is a veteran ranger of the Night's Watch stationed at the Shadow Tower. He's an older man regarded as a great archer. He is nicknamed Squire Dalbridge because in the spirit of his youth, he squired for King Jaehaerys II Targaryen. He is said to have the keenest eyes in the Night's Watch. And he's one of the 100 men reinforcements from the Shadow Tower to arrive at the Fist of the First Men. And then, he is chosen by Corin Halfhand along Evan, Stone Snake, and Jon Snow to go with him. So, he's specifically chosen. And King Jaehaerys II, right? He is 259 to 262. And then he is preceded in between Aegon V, Egg, and Aerys II. So he was his squire.
That's a pretty big deal, man.
And so we don't know exactly when. We don't know when he goes to the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But my guess would have to be like, did he fight in Robert's Rebellion and he went to the wall, sort of as like a, it seems like that's obviously that might be why Alistair Thorne went. Like maybe they went right together, perhaps even. Because it seems like I'm sure there were some Targaryen sort of loyalists at that time that obviously went to the wall. We sort of know that with Alistair Thorne, but I don't know that we know that Alistair Thorne was forced into going to the wall. That's not specifically said. We just know he fought in Robert's Rebellion on the other side. So perhaps Dalbridge was the same, but given the timetable, I almost think if they know him as Squire Dalbridge, I would have to imagine that he would have moved up the ranks. I mean, if you're squire for a king and then you continue to serve, for the Targaryens, he should have moved. He should have, I would imagine, have moved up. Would have been a knight at least, or perhaps a lord of some small castle at some point. So the other option would potentially be maybe Summerhall. Maybe he accompanied Sir Duncan the Tall, perhaps, when if he goes north to the wall after Summerhall.
Good, yeah. I mean, I get what. Yeah, when was
there's really not a lot about Dalbridge. All we know is that in the spirit of his youth, he squired for King Jaehaerys II.
Cool to think about who he could be. Jaehaerys II Targaryen. Yeah. So okay. What's interesting is that if Jaehaerys II, so that would be he's king. So then he's king after. Is he king after Summerhall then?
Yes, because remember Rhaegar's born at Summerhall.
I'm just thinking, like, it's interesting that different waves of Targaryens go to the wall. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or Targaryen loyalists or supporters. 259 is when it is destroyed, when it happens, and then so his reign was 259
because Egg dies.
Yeah,
Egg dies at Summerhall.
So then Dalbridge is his squire, right there, in his
right. Well, it does. It could. He could be his squire before he became king.
Yeah.
So then the question should be raised: don't you think that if you're squire to a king, I mean, I guess it's his squire, so it's a little different. It's not like Dunk. Like Dunk is Egg is Dunk's squire. It's the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
But when he becomes king, don't you think, obviously, if he's close with this guy, he's going to name him a knight and even perhaps put him on his king's guard?
Yeah.
Don't you find? Wouldn't that be the scenario in which? I mean, that to me seems like that would be a pretty logical scenario. So how does this guy end up at the only thing I can think of is, again, he
stuck around.
He continues to serve the Targaryens and then ultimately is sent to the wall or he's either sent to the wall following Robert's rebellion, or he just chooses to go at some point, which to me seems, if you're living in King's Landing, why would you choose to go to the wall?
Right.
Because everybody we see that's in King's Landing now, nobody seems like they want to leave King's Landing that has any sort of power or influence, wants to just, I'm going to go to the wall. So I almost would have to say he was sent there.
Wow. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, here's something else.
Because Jaehaerys' reign itself is pretty short because he's kind of a sickly guy. So, he takes it. It just says Dalbridge, who would later join the Night's Watch, served as a squire to Jaehaerys II in his youth, which, comes from the World of Ice and Fire and a Theon 5 chapter in a Clash of Kings.
Okay, so of the 3 people who are with Corin Halfhand, and I'm making a real stretch here on Eben, but Eben is an interrogator. He's the one who can he's good at interrogations. Might have learned that possibly at court or something. He's very good at people, getting them to give up their secrets. He's also the one who's described, his head is described as such of an egg, right? It looks like an egg. They're holding it up by the ear, and when they show it to Jon, it's an egg.
Right.
Dalbridge is a squire to a Targaryen, and then Stone Snake, again, in that title alone, seemingly there could be some connections made to dragons and stones, and dragons looking like a snake of some kind, And let me pull up him too, because these again are all the companions of Corin. Yeah, just interesting that. And then they, seemingly all want to protect Jon. And it's actually Eben who says that he wants him to go. He says, send Jon. Eben had urged, he can ride as fast as me. Jon has a different part to play. He is half a boy still. So again, Eben's making the case like we should send him on. No, said Corin, he is a man of the Night's Watch. And then again, we know that Corin has his reasons to keep him. Now, Eben does get killed later. I mean, maybe he knows that Rattleshirt and those guys, like, no one can ride fast enough to kind of get to the fist of the first men. Ygritte says at the end of this chapter, like with sad kind of eyes, that, hey, we've already moved well up to the wall, right? Like, we're already in position, and we moved much faster than you realized. So
yeah. So I guess to kind of close up here on Squire Dalbridge, just from everything I could see, it almost the only other scenario I can see is you would not. It seems like that the way it's sort of worded is that he squired for King Jaehaerys in his youth, which, judging by his age, I would have to say is probably actually, I don't know, Jaehaerys would have to be like in his 20s or so, because he's pretty frail and weak. And then when he becomes king, he's not going to have a squire. So I think the likely scenario is, considering if he didn't obviously get promoted to lord or any of that stuff, he either for some reason decides to go to the wall once Jaehaerys becomes king, or 2, I would have to say he fought in Robert's Rebellion and goes.